Peace, family. It's your brother Marc Lamont Hill. We are here tonight to talk about an important conversation. Are Black men being attacked unfairly by sexual assault lawsuits? Is there an attack? Is there a war? Is there a conspiracy? Is there a plot against Black men? In the last week, because of the Adult Survivors Act in New York, we have seen a lot of lawsuits come out. The first big one was Diddy. Then there was Bill Cosby. Those were the two big ones, Diddy and Bill Cosby. Now, for Bill Cosby, obviously, it was no surprise. He's been hit with lawsuits. He's had more than 60 accusations against him. But Diddy came out. And while there have always been rumors and speculation, this lawsuit was another level. And people said, oh my God, what's going on with Diddy? And the lawsuit was filed by Cassie. But then the floodgates opened. Once we realized that Friday, November 24th, will be the last day that celebrities or not celebrities, the last day that anybody could file a sexual assault lawsuit in civil court through the Adult Survivors Act. We knew that there were going to be a lot of high-profile celebrity accusations, a lot of high-profile celebrity names. We knew all kinds of stuff were going to happen because this is what happens. When there's lots of lawsuits, the celebrity ones are going to get put on the front page. Thousands of people have been covered under this new law, and thousands of people have filed, but we only going to hear about the famous ones. That makes sense. But the question that many people have asked, the question that many people have raised is, why are these famous people so Black? Yes, Jimmy Iovine, Interscope record exec, his name was mentioned. Yes, we heard about Axl Rose this week, but we also heard about L.A. Reid. We heard about Jamie Foxx. We heard about Cuba Gooding Jr. a couple times. We heard about Diddy. We heard about Bill Cosby. We've heard about a lot of people, and we've seen brothers on the internet, brothers in the streets. We've seen brothers in the barbershop say, and I've heard this myself, why is it so many Black people? Now, it's a fair question. The question is fair. Black people make up 13% of the population, 14 on a good day. So if we make up 13% of the people in this country, then of course, if things are racially proportionate, if we're racially represented properly, we should make up 13% of other things. We should make up 13% of college students. We should make up 13% of corporate boardrooms. We should make up 13% of PhDs, 13% of homeowners. But when you see us make up double digits, beyond double digits, 50, 60, 70% of the prison population, you say, oh, we're overrepresented. When you see we make up 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of the suspension rolls in schools, we're overrepresented. We make up more than we should. And when you look at the number of high-profile sexual assault cases that came out, we are overrepresented. The question is why? Some people say it's an attempt by the media to make Black people look bad, make Black men look bad. Some people say it's a conspiracy just to get a money grab. We've heard that. We've heard all kinds of allegations. We've heard all kinds of suspicions about why this might be happening. But the fundamental question that so many people have been asking is it a sexual assault conspiracy against Black men? And this isn't the first time we've asked this question. We've asked the question when the Me Too movement really hit its peak. It's a question that keeps coming up. Is it a conspiracy against Black men? So I want to answer that question today. We ain't going to take a whole lot of time. I'm going to answer that question today, break it down for you, and maybe take a question or two. Everybody hit the subscribe button right now. If you have not hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button right now so that you can join the MLH fam in terms of getting all the information, in terms of getting all the updates. Hit the reminder button so that you can get reminders whenever I go live or whenever the new video comes out, because we're talking about stuff across the board, from pop culture to Palestine. We're covering everything on this channel, and I want to make sure that you use this as a space to get education. Also hit the join button. If you want to join the MLH fan, if you want to join the MLH fam at any level, do that. That's what allows us to create this space. It's what allows us to create this context. It's what allows us to build the infrastructure for political education, for radical conversation, for extraordinary teach-ins to cover the stuff that the world doesn't want to be covered. That's what we're doing here. So are Black men being conspired against? let's start with the background, the historical piece of this. Because that question, is there a conspiracy against Black men with regard to these sexual assault charges, stems from a deep history in this country that looks at Black men as violent, that looks at Black men as hypersexual, that looks at Black men as predators. There is a historical disposition in this country to believe that Black men are dangerous beings until proven otherwise. The Black male body, the Black penis, we could talk, it's nighttime and we all adults here. The Black penis has been seen as a weapon of mass destruction. Fears of white women being attacked, assaulted, or otherwise physically engaged by Black men have animated all kinds of laws. We've seen numerous lynchings, all driven by this idea that the Black male is a predator who always wants sexual gratification. And it's not just limited to Black men. Black women are seen as hypersexual and lascivious, meaning they always want to have sex. And part of the reason why that was so dangerous for Black women was because it made it easy to construct Black women as sexual deviants, whatever that means. It was easy to construct Black women as unrapeable. If a woman is always hypersexual, always wants to have sex, has no morals or no powers of discrimination between partners and all of that stuff that they would say, then it's very hard to say that they were sexually assaulted. And so much of the sexual violence we saw on slave plantations that then was followed by sexual violence in the Jim Crow era and sexual violence now was all sort of played out in a way that made it seem as if Black women couldn't really be victims. And while I say this stuff is historical, those historical images, those historical narratives carry forward today. We still talk and think about Black men and women in that way. And so these narratives persist. They persist on TV, they persist in the media, they persist in all of these spaces. And so, yes, at some level, there is a conspiracy to construct Black people. Now, let me be clear. When I say conspiracy, I don't mean a bunch of people in a boardroom twirling their mustaches saying, how are we going to get Black people today? No, it's systemic. It's a way that our minds work. It's the scripts that are embedded in our minds and in our consciousness about how the world works that shape us that way and that make us respond that way. So yes, at some level, there are historical things going on, and there's systemic things going on, and there are ways that our language and our history and our minds make us see Black men differently than their white male counterparts, and make us see Black women differently than their white woman counterparts. But that don't necessarily mean that these cases are a conspiracy. So let's talk about these cases. All right, we ain't gonna break down each case. I have another video breaking down these cases. You can go back and look. I put it out 2 days ago, breaking down each individual case and what each alleged victim was saying about what happened, what their story is, etc. It's not my job to adjudicate guilt or innocence in this space. I will say, however, that my disposition, my belief, my impulse, my knowledge base all compel me to believe women. Doesn't mean everybody's telling the truth. Doesn't mean that there's nobody looking for money. Doesn't mean that nobody is distorting the facts. I'm not saying that, but let's not begin from the premise that women are lying. People don't come forward and make up allegations in general, right? And a lot of these allegations aren't being made by white women, which again plays into the historical narrative of tearing down the Black man. A lot of these are being made by Black women and brown women. We have to factor that in too. There's no long history of Black women lying on Black men with rape or brown women lying on Black men with rape. Again, I'm not saying it never happens. That's not my argument. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm saying that is not the dominant stream or the dominant strand or the dominant practice in our culture. So I just want to put that out there. But you can look at those old videos and see how I break down those cases. What I want to say today, though, is this is a reckoning. This moment right now is a reckoning. The Adult Survivors Act allowed people in New York to pursue legal justice after the statute of limitations had passed. That's why you're seeing people come out 10, 20, 30 years later and say, this person did this to me. This person did that to me. This thing happened. And all these cases aren't the same. As I said before, Jamie Foxx's case of saying that someone groped or that he groped someone in a bar is very different than the allegation against Marcellus Wiley or Diddy or other people. And again, people have to investigate these cases. Everybody's entitled to their day in court. I'm not adjudicating innocence or guilt here, but let's talk about what it means for all these cases to come out. The easy answer, maybe even the seductive answer, is that, oh, it's a conspiracy against black men. Yeah, that's an easy answer. I would explain it, right? But that answer lets us off the hook. Another answer, I would argue a better answer, is that we live in a rape culture. And rape culture doesn't mean that everybody gets raped. Rape culture means that we live in a culture that normalizes sexual violence, that naturalizes sexual violence, that normalizes uh, the practice of denying the legitimacy of claims that people make of being sexually assaulted. We laugh at sexual assault. We dismiss cases. We deny victims' humanity. There's a whole culture around this stuff. And if you live in a rape culture, then certain things become normalized. Now, again, black men didn't start this. Black men didn't advance this. Black men are a part of this system. So there's nothing that can be said about a record exec like L.A. Reid or Diddy that can't be said about a million record execs who are white. There's nothing that could be said about Marcellus Wiley, innocent or guilty, that can't be said about a million athletes who are white. For every Marcellus Wiley, there's Ben Roethlisberger, who's alleged to have done some serious stuff. Y'all can Google that. So this isn't about black men. But what happens is, again, if black men are the only people on the headlines, and black people are the dominant names that get said, then yes, it looks like black men are the prominent and primary purveyors of sexual violence in this country. But the truth is, everybody's doing it. And by everybody, I don't mean every single person. I mean, in every industry, there's a lot of people doing this. And unfortunately, we live in a culture of domination where we normalize domination. So we just accept that if you're going to work in Hollywood, you're going to have sex. Or if you go to prison, you're going to get sexually assaulted. And again, we make movies and jokes about don't drop the soap in jail. We have a culture of normalizing domination and sexual domination. So if that's what's going on in our world, if that's what's going on in our cultural universe, then it's no surprise that we would see this stuff. Harvey Pierre, the former president of Bad Boy Records, is accused of grooming a young assistant and eventually engaging in sexual misconduct with her. That story you hear about Harvey Pierre is a story you hear about every record exec or every record company in the world. It's a sad story. It's a disgusting story, but it's a very common story. I work in media. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard. It ain't just Bill Cosby. There's a million Matt Lauers. And we got to be honest about that. The problem is the power dynamics, the wealth dynamics, the access dynamics often make white men's crimes erasable. They make white men's crimes less legible. They make white men's crimes, oh, well, boys will be boys. And so, yes, many of the white people that we hear about, they're low bottom feeders in the business, and the upper echelon ones, their names don't ever get said. So we don't end up knowing this. Or you see somebody like Axl Rose, and you say, well, why are we hearing about Axl Rose more than we're hearing about, why are we hearing about Axl Rose less than we're hearing about, say, a Cuba Gooding Jr.? And so this becomes part of the conversation too. But we got to be honest about this. Part of it is the black men who've been put on the front page are high profile. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York. Thank you. Somebody told me to clean the lint off my chin. Thank you, Noop. That's what Noops are for, man. Keep us clean, man. Sigma would have let that stuff stay. So part of it is these men are just more high profile. Diddy's one of the most famous people in the world. So of course we're going to talk about him more. Cuba Gooding Jr. won an Oscar. Of course we're going to talk about him more. People know Jimmy Iovine, but they don't know Jimmy Iovine as much as they know Diddy, even if Iovine got more money and power and influence, potentially. So we have to be honest about this in terms of why it's happening. So yes, the media loves a good black predator story, and they will always advance that more than they'll advance a white predator story. That's true. Yes, they will make all forms of violence seem the same, so that every black person who makes a bad choice or commits harm is seen as the worst person in the world. I'm not talking about these cases, I'm speaking in general terms now. All that's true. But at the end of the day, the conspiracy only works if you do it. Let me put that differently. It would be a much more dramatic and disturbing conspiracy if every black man were being framed. If a bunch of black men were being framed for sexual assault, they would be like, oh my God, this is the worst conspiracy ever. I'd be with you. But the fact of the matter is, everybody ain't lying. All these cases ain't made up. People say, well, then why they wait so long? Well, because if you've been a victim of sexual violence, if you've been harmed, if you've been abused, if you've been raped, if you've been harassed, a lot of times it takes a long time for you to feel safe enough to come out. Sometimes you feel physically unsafe. Sometimes you feel emotionally unsafe. Sometimes you blame yourself. Sometimes you're so traumatized that you repress it, or you're just scared to say something. Sometimes you're in a business where saying it might get you short-term justice, but may get you boxed out of the business. Listen to Drew Dixon and what she talks about with her allegations against Russell Simmons. This is the context. So there's a whole lot of reasons why people don't come forward. And by the time they do come forward, there's a statute of limitations to say, oh, too late. And that's why the Adult Survivors Law was made. It wasn't intended for a cash grab. It wasn't intended to trap celebrities. It was intended to create an opportunity for people to come forward again. It was also a Child Survivors Law, very similar, to create space for people who've been harmed to get justice. People say, well, why is justice a check and not why you go to the police? For a lot of us, justice isn't putting somebody in a cage. For a lot of us, justice isn't sitting on a stand. For a lot of us, justice isn't being asked, why'd you wear that dress? Why were you there at this hotel that night? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? You didn't think he was going to have sex? I heard you had sex with X number of people this week, this month, this day, this night. In a lot of ways, the criminal process victimizes or re-victimizes the person who's already been harmed. So there's a lot of reasons why people don't want to do this. Some people just don't want to put people in prison. But making a person whole financially because they couldn't work or because they needed therapy or because that's the best way to make this person feel contrition is at least a tactic and a strategy. I'm not saying everybody should pursue money either. I'm just saying it's not an unreasonable option. It's not an unreasonable choice. So that brings me back to the fundamental question. Is this sexual assault wave or this wave of sexual assault allegations a conspiracy? The short answer is no. It is not a conspiracy. The way the media talks about it might be problematic. The way the media responds to it might be problematic. The way we ignore the white cases might be problematic. And you can say that might be part of some deep systemic conspiracy against black men and boys. Sure, I'll concede that. But let's not begin from the presumption that all these women are not telling the truth, that all these women are lying, that all these women had nothing happen to them. Let's begin from a premise that in these industries and in these places, men have been encouraged, all of us, all men, all of us have been encouraged and incentivized to be patriarchal, to be misogynistic, that we're taught that women's bodies are not their own. And we're taught that if you're powerful enough, women's bodies can be accessible to you. Somebody here in the comments said, but it's only black men being prosecuted. My brother, that is just not true. Harvey Weinstein is sitting in a cell right now. And I can name others. And Bill Cosby isn't. Now we know it's a procedural thing, but the point is there's some white men in jail cells. And again, that's a whole other conversation, but it's just that as a matter, that's a narrative that we have, but it's simply not true. So we have to, instead of looking outward for the conspiracy, let's look inward and say, how can we move in such a way that even if there is a conspiracy, we can't be trapped in it, right? Again, I don't want to live in a world as a black man where I get to be as irresponsible and unaccountable and violent as white men. That's not the world I want to live in. I don't want to live in a world where Bill Cosby gets to be as unaccountable as Harvey Weinstein was for so long. I want to live in a world where Harvey Weinstein is held just as accountable as black men are. You get my point? But so often we've gotten so caught up in the fact that white men are never held accountable in our minds for these things that we lose sight of the fact that that doesn't excuse the wrong behavior. Yes, we should each get the same level of justice. Yes, we should each get the same type of response. Yes, black men should not be treated worse than white men. But the final end game, the thing that will make us recipients of justice as a community, is not when black men get treated the same as white men do right now in a rape culture. No, the answer is for everybody to be made whole, for everybody to get restorative justice, for everybody to be treated properly, and to uproot rape culture so profoundly that we no longer have to seek justice for sexual violence because we won't be committing sexual violence anymore. We won't be looking to figure out how to restore people who are raped because there won't be rape, there won't be abuse, there won't be harassment. That's the end game. So when I look at uh, Harvey Pierre at Bad Boy Records, or I look at a L.A. Reid and I hear the allegations, I want to uproot the culture in the music industry where people feel like that's how you go along to get along, and where people feel like if I'm in power, I can do that to somebody. That's where we want to be. I want to live, I want to work in a place and live in a place. I want to exist in a community where my behavior isn't shaped by what I can get away with, but rather how I want to interact and treat other people and to make them and to treat them as human beings. So when I hear the stories about somebody groping someone in a bar, or someone uh, being physically intrusive to someone's body in a sexual way, I gotta I gotta say, well, how can we get into a place where men don't think they can do that? And it's mostly men, let's be honest, where men don't think they can do that. We gotta uproot that stuff. Black men aren't the fundamental problem. Patriarchy is the problem. Misogyny is the problem. Rape culture is the problem. And if we uproot that stuff, then everyone will follow, and black men will be right there too. But as black men, our vision of freedom can't be to be like white men. That ain't freedom, y'all.